Welcome back to Tread Talk from Treadmill TV. Ian Miller is our guest today. He is a natural doctor and has his own clinic in North Canton, Ohio called My Complete Health. He ran cross-country, track, and marathons and learned how to fuel, recover, and feed the body what it needs to be at its best. We're going to talk to him about liver health, amongst other things. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube, on the podcast, and please check out the Premium Trail Video app on the App Store and on Google Play.
I think the only beneficiary of COVID-19 are dogs, because then they see their people for 12 hours, 24 hours a day.
Oh, yeah, she's loving it. I mean, she's right here, you know. But I think that what's nice is that people are regularly asking, like, you know, they're coming in and getting their vitamin C, and they're coming in and they're just doing things on their own. And so I think this is really making a lot of people really consider their health and everything. And so I think in the long run, it'll actually be very beneficial for my type of business. Just in the short run,
yeah,
kind of sucks.
Yeah,
just like everything else. And then, of course, like I'm quasi cleaning and preparing and everything, because my CNC machine should be here April 29th. Somewhere around there. So like it's supposed to be warm this next week. So I'm going to be I'm going to be working on garage and rearranging some of the freezers and doing some other things so I can make room for that. But yeah.
So I'm going to give you a bio. So
okay.
Everybody knows the name Ian Miller because of
Big Fat Greek Wedding.
The Big Fat Greek Wedding movie, where Ian Miller is the groom in the story, right. And he's from outside of the Big Fat Greek Wedding.
Yep.
So everybody already knows that name, and if they don't know it already, they can probably have it in the back of their mind, like, why do I know that name? It sounds familiar.
Mm-hmm.
So you and I met in 2003. We got to college a week. Not more than a week. It was like 2 or 3 weeks ahead of everybody else. And when I came in, you just moved from Texas like that day.
Yep. No, that's not true. I had been moved since January.
Okay. So, but for some reason you were very tired the day we met, and you were on the bottom bunk of the dorm room. You sat up, said, "I'll take the bottom bunk if that's okay with you." And I said, "Okay." And you laid back down. So that's how we met in 2003. You, of all people, have reinvented yourself probably more times than anyone else that I know. So short list that I know of, you were a history major in college. Also during college, you were a marathoner. Then you changed to a science major. What science was it?
Well, it was actually biology and chemistry first, and it was under the pre-med banner.
Yeah.
So pre-med degree. So I did that first, and then two things. One is that I mouthed off way too much during class, and the professors didn't actually like me, so I was failing that. But then I also was seeing the people that were absolutely succeeding with it.
Yeah.
And I didn't really want to have anything to do with the medical model that I was going into. So I quit that and then switched to history because I was getting a history minor the whole time.
Also, during college, you were the supplement expert. You're a photographer, videographer, electronic salesman. You're now a mushroom farmer, the greens farmer, and a functional medicine coach. Is that about right?
And certified holistic health practitioner.
Certified holistic practitioner.
Yep. So that would be considered a natural doctor. Okay. Not to be confused with a naturopathic doctor, which is still not accredited in Ohio, but it's a 4-year degree in about 15 states.
Okay.
So, yeah.
And now your main gig is My Complete Health on Frank Road in North Canton, Ohio. And the website is My Complete Health ND, as in November David. I forget the D for the military alphabet. NovemberDelta.com.
Yep.
So
Delta.
mycompletehealthnd.com. Ian Miller, and you came to talk to us because I wanted to talk to you about nutrition. So we've got a list of things talking about energy drinks, carbs and sugar, liver, nutrition versus pills, salt recovery, heat tolerance, potassium diet, high function digestion, and a little bit about what you do at your clinic. So we'll go through all those topics just one at a time. So I'll let you do most of the talking from here because you do get on a topic and you're very knowledgeable, so you can go on for a long time on each one of these. But the idea is just to talk about things that come up a lot in conversations with other runners, things that pop up on Facebook pages, and then also just in conversation.
Right. So most of the time, so like energy drinks. So like at the clinic, like I'm talking to a lot of like young people because, there's this lull in health, like people that run out of their health between about like 25 to 30 and about 40. And so it's just 10 to 15 years, but where people are actually doing pretty okay. Unless there's something acutely wrong. But like under 25, under 20, like these kids are getting hammered because they just grow up on sugar and fake food. And so one of the things I always talk to them about is energy drinks, recovery drinks, and everything, because they're marketed as being, necessary. It's like you work out, you got to have Powerade. You work out, you got to have Gatorade. You got to have Propel water. You got to have this clinically formulated for, well, it's clinically formulated to like steal your money, number one. Okay. But number two, a lot of times it's just pounding you with like 6 or 7 different forms of caffeine. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, it's like if you're in an emergency situation and you need to be alert and awake and everything, I mean, yeah, caffeine tabs. Well, for that matter, caffeine tabs and cocaine would probably not be much better than a 5-hour energy. But the whole problem is that like these kids they don't like coffee, which if you're an adult, just drink coffee. So they end up taking in Monsters or Red Bulls or something like that, and it's a lot of sugar and it's a lot of caffeine, and then all it succeeds in doing is increases their anxiety because it's just wringing out your adrenal glands the whole time. So your fight and flight signals are out they're just all jacked up. And then you get a huge crash after that because the adrenaline is forcing all of the blood sugar out from the blood and into the muscles because you got to get ready to fight something. So if you're trying to actually do something long term, if you're not a sprinter or a weightlifter or something like that, like if you're a runner or a cycler or something, these aren't going to work for you. And then there's this idea about, recovery drinks. We got to recover. We have to replenish what we lost. And it's like, that's kind of crap because unless you're like less than 1% body fat, you got enough body fat on you to last like 2 months. You're fine.
Yeah.
Okay. But then the other thing is that, okay, fair enough. You probably are dehydrated. After a long workout, long run, sweating in the summer and everything. Good. You're dehydrated, but you're not missing sugar, which is going to be in a lot of these recovery drinks. You're missing salt.
Yeah. So when we're talking recovery drinks, we're talking mostly like Gatorade, Powerade, but then there's also recovery drinks like Cytomax, Endurox, some of these other things that you find at the running stores.
Those are better. Yeah, those are better than your standard off-the-shelf Coke and Pepsi products for sure. But Endurox, I'd have to look up. In fact, I can look up Cytomax ratios real quick. I never actually took Cytomax. I know of it, but I took Endurox for a long time. That was super popular in Texas. The problem Yeah, sports. So it's like Cytomax Sports Performance Mix, something like that.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. The only problem I have with the Endurox and the Cytomax and everything is that you end up just getting a lot of artificial everything in it. It's artificial colors, artificial dyes, artificial flavors, and all of those things are going to really impact your liver because your liver has to deal with all of that stuff. So you just broke down a ton of muscle fibers. So you got a bunch of dead bodies floating around in your body. So cell bodies and you've got metabolic waste and you got all this other stuff, and that has to be filtered by the liver. And then you throw in some of these, well formulated. And don't get me wrong, like Endurox and Cytomax and these things, they're well formulated. But the problem is they're going around about it in just, in my opinion, the wrong way. Whereas if you just looked at more whole food forms of things, you could get the same thing done. So for instance, like if you really wanted a sports recovery aid, it would be better just to buy whole juice powders of something. So it's like, okay, yeah, you need something portable. Yeah, you need to replenish hydration. So it's like if you got like goji berry powder, like wheatgrass juice powder, barley juice powder. You got some of these powdered juices things going. Create your own blend, and then if you throw some salt on it, or if you actually just get salt tabs, then you're going to be good to go. But like I'm looking at Cytomax here, and outside of the protein, well, this particular Cytomax doesn't have very much protein in it, but some of them have protein in 4-to-1. Like Endurox is really, it's like, okay, 4 grams of carbs per 1 gram of protein, and that is supposed to do what is known as like protein shuttling. And the reason that is that it'll spike insulin, and insulin will then drive that protein into your blood. Bodybuilders do this all the time. They just inject a lot of insulin like a diabetic, and then they eat a lot of protein, and then they eat a lot of carbs, and then it all goes in, and then they get swole. That's quote unquote swole.
Not with bodybuilders, but that 4-to-1 magic ratio. That's part of the reason that so many people drank chocolate milk in like 2000 to 2015.
Right,
that was a big thing.
Right. Now, if you take chocolate like cocoa, organic cocoa, it's great. Like I have organic cocoa over there, and I put it in my shakes, and it's like if I want to make something like kind of nice and berry, and like I'm trying to have a healthy dessert, if that's a thing, whatever. But that's fantastic. And then you take the essence of milk, which is pretty good, although that's debatable because a cow is really the wrong side. It's like if you're going for like what's the most digestible, you should really be looking at like sheep or goat, because you want to get like the approximate poundage, the approximate weight of the mammal to the other mammal means that the milks are going to be very similar. Okay. But in terms of similar milks, the human milk and the cow milk are extremely different. And the cow milk can be good based on your ability to digest it. Now, is it good in this country? No, it is not, because we have crazy zombie milk. They put like 200, 300, 1,000 cows worth of milk into this giant vat, mix it all up, and then they do all sorts of weird. Look up the homogenization and pasteurization process. It is not milk anymore. It is a processed food, and I will argue down to the mat on anybody that says otherwise. Now, is it tasty? Sure, it's great. Like, but is chocolate milk like so you're telling me I can have my dessert and it's a recovery? Yeah, I'm going to go for that. And a lot of people do. And that's the same way a lot of people get in trouble with eating too much fruit as a recovery as well. And then they overload their liver with too much fructose, which is a liver toxic poison. I've got slides on that. If anybody wants to argue about it, I got slides. But that's what it is. And you have to be careful with what you're saying on that. And so that's why if your idea of if you're trying to legitimately recover, if you just want dessert, if you just want chocolate milk, just eat that. Just like, don't lie about it. That's what I tell all of my clients. Just be honest with yourself. But if you actually want to recover, like wheatgrass, barley grass, with salt and chlorella, spirulina, if you want to have some proteins on there. The green grass powders, if you don't want to do fresh or you're trying to have it after, that has far more recovery aspect to it than any of these fully processed recovery sports drinks.
And you're getting those into just water?
Yeah, just water, however much water you want. And so and the nice part about juice powders is that they're usually 20-1. So there's like usually 15 or 20-1, which means that for every 1 tablespoon of a juice powder, you're getting 15 tablespoons of juice, which that's like 2 or 3 cups of juice. It's quite powerful.
Okay.
And so then if you look at wheatgrass, for instance, and you look at the protein ratio of wheatgrass or barley grass, it's going to actually come out to be much better than a lot of these recovery drinks. And it's fully, as long as you get something that is not overly processed and it's from a reputable source, it's going to be far better for you as a recovery item than any of these sports drinks or designer recovery drinks. And it'll perform a lot better. Not to mention antioxidants, chlorophylls, detoxifiers. You're actually adding, like the chlorophyll is really interesting because it's only 1 molecule away from being hemoglobin, which is the main transport molecule in humans. And so you're in essence giving yourself a transfusion every time you drink that. And so because the body it's very easy for the body to readily convert that. And so for women that are also looking for a good iron source as well, then wheatgrass, barley grass, and all that stuff will work very well for that because it's chelated. It'll go straight in.
Sorry, my lovely wife is getting me handwritten notes. Okay, so your suggestion is no energy drinks, and then if you do have a recovery drink, it should be something that you basically make yourself with the powder rather than getting something off the shelf.
Yeah, and let me be clear. It's like most people, unless you are a high-level athlete or a regular athlete, and I would say collegiate or some sort of like you are actually training for something. But if you're just going to work out, water and salt will get it done.
Yeah.
Like it's like Celtic sea salt, Himalayan salt. That's really the thing that you're after. And then just go eat something afterwards.
That's funny because that's like the U.S. military advice is take a salt tablet and drink some water.
Yeah, but because it worked.
Yeah.
But now since the 80s, everybody's scared to death about salt and kidney function or salt and high blood pressure. And there's an excellent book. Let me look up this name real quick. It's like, let's see. So it's like The Truth About Salt, or or I'll find it. You can put it in the description. But there's this guy that actually wrote it. Like he wrote 500 independent papers, and then wrote the Salt Fix. Okay. The Salt Fix. That's what it is, by Dr. James J. Oh crap! I'm not going to say that.
Okay, by Dr. James.
Yeah, Dr. James. We'll just go with Dr. James. But it's so the Salt Fix: Why Experts Got It All Wrong and How Eating More Salt Might Save Your Life. And so the reality is that salt does not increase high blood pressure. It doesn't increase blood pressure. It doesn't cause high blood pressure. Your adrenal glands need salt to recover. If you don't have salt, then you become weak and heat intolerant. And so if you want the opposite of all of those things, just add salt to your diet or add salt to your recovery.
Okay, so moving from salt to sugar,
Mm-hmm.
Carbs and sugar are, well, they're both carbs, but they're simple and complex. So do you want to tell me about how they're not the same?
Yeah. So when we're dealing with sugar, and what we really need to separate and people need to understand is that there's glucose, sucrose, and fructose. Those are the three main sugars that they're going to run into. So glucose, so when you have a complex carbohydrate like a piece of toast or something like that, the enzymes in your saliva, your amylase enzymes are going to break that down, and it's going to turn into almost 100% glucose. Okay, well, the carbs in it will. Mm-hmm. And that's going to go to your liver, and your liver is going to be like, I know exactly what to do with this. And your cells, everything in your body does run on glucose. It does run on carbohydrates. Don't let anybody tell you differently. Now, the problem comes in is that when you get all these marketing people that say, carbs are carbs. All carbs impact you exactly the same way. So you got slow carbs and you got fast carbs. And chemically, that's completely inaccurate. So when we have like standard table sugar, which is sucrose, that's one glucose and one fructose. The fructose is a metabolic poison, and it has no transport mechanism in the liver. But it's no other cell in the body can do anything with fructose except the liver. So whenever we have a substance that enters the body and only the liver can deal with it, that is by definition a poison. And there's another book, it should be Sugar, the Bitter Truth. Yeah, Sugar, the Bitter Truth, by Robert H. Lustig, and you can look up Robert H. Lustig on YouTube, and he gives some fantastic presentations on sugar, and he'll show you step by step how fructose causes non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, and how everybody in America basically has some form of non-alcoholic fatty liver disease because we eat entirely too much fructose. And unfortunately, and I get a lot of flack for this, but I categorize actual fruit in that, out of season fruit in that as well, because we have access to an unprecedented amount of fruit in our country and in the world, because we can get it from all of these different areas of the country or of the world and flown in, and you can literally eat fruit 365 days a year all the time. And there are actually like fruitarians or something?
Yeah, I was thinking of those people earlier when you mentioned that, because this morning we had pancakes, and Lauren makes these really good whole wheat pancakes with apple cider vinegar, and we put strawberries on top of them. But I thought these strawberries are the size of hand fruit. I just had a giggle out of that.
Yeah, exactly. Well, what people don't realize is that the same steroids that make our baseball players reach new heights of glory are the same ones that they use on the fruits themselves. There's a whole category of steroids that go on there, and and people always wonder, it's like, why something super organic where they did not use any growth enhancements on there, why the smaller it is, the more flavor it has. So you take this small berry or the small grape and you pop it in your mouth and you're just like, whoa, that's so much flavor. But then you take this giant grape, like the size of a small apple, and you eat that, and it's like there's no flavor to it. And that's because the steroids just pump it full of water, and they but unfortunately they don't break down either. They go into you, and then your liver has to deal with that, and then it can cause like all sorts of imbalances and everything. So, but that's why I lump fruit into that as well. Now, is all fruit bad? No. Is excessive amounts of fruit bad? Yes. Just like excessive amounts of anything is bad. And so what people need to realize is that fruit was designed. Look at the harvest cycles of all the fruit that was around. It gets mature in the fall. So it's like September to November, you're going to have a lot of fruit, and people ate lot of fruit then, and they gained a bunch of weight, and then they did not have fruit or a lot of other food during the winter, and then by the time summer rolls around, they were all nice and trim and everything ready to go, and their livers had a really big break on that. But fructose is the main culprit that's killing a lot of people in this country, and people don't realize it, and that's why, like, if you get non-inflammatory carbohydrates like rices and beans and other things, those do not impact the health of your liver hardly at all. But if you have things which people think that they're good for you because the food pyramid was amended because of lobbying in the mid-90s to include a whole section of fruits and vegetables, find a food pyramid before, I think it was 1995, it was just vegetables. It wasn't fruits or vegetables. It was just vegetables. And so yeah, I mean, it's like you got to be careful. So they're not the same. And if you do the research, which is outside the scope of this video, on the impact of fructose on the liver, it's going to be eye-opening for a lot of people. And it's going to make them look at supposedly healthy foods a lot differently. But in terms of the athlete and the runner, eating a piece of toast for let's say like we go back to recovery after a workout. What do you want? What will actually get used faster and would be better for you after a workout? Well, it would be that bagel and not necessarily the like high sugary sports drink or something like that. And because it's very low impact on the liver, assuming that you're not diabetic. And this assumes you're a normal person, okay? But like it'll spike insulin after the workout, which insulin again is going back to being nutrient shuttling, which means that all the nutrients, all the fats, all the everything that's floating around, it's going to push those nutrients into your muscles, and it will actually aid recovery. So if you had your green juice powder or just salt water, and then you had a bagel, there you go. Recovery. Done. It's super easy.
And what was the name of that book? Because I'm writing down some of the names, because we talked about the salt fix, and what was the one about sugar?
Well, the YouTube is Sugar, the Bitter Truth. And then the book is actually called Fat Chance, Beating the Odds Against Sugar.
Okay. And then you started to touch on the topic a little bit, but you're talking about liver maintenance and how complex carbohydrates are better for you than simple carbohydrates or sugar. So do you want to talk about liver maintenance? Yeah.
So let's just revisit that, because like what you said there was about halfway correct. So glucose. So if you have complex carbohydrate, let's say you take wheat, pasta, all these things that we know to be complex, as soon as they hit your mouth, they're simple. Okay. Because the amylase enzyme, if it's going to do its job properly, is going to break them all down into glucose, and then those are going to get absorbed very quickly after they exit the stomach. And those are going to go all to, the glucose part of it itself, it can be sent to cells directly to be used as fuel. Let's not forget that. And it can be sent over to the brain to be used as fuel as well. And so, but when it gets to the liver, so instead of like just hammering its way in like fructose does, glucose has a nice gentle transport molecule, and your liver knows what to do with it, and it's going to build up glycogen stores in the liver. And there's actually, glucose for the liver is so non-toxic that there is a genetic disorder where these kids or these people cannot release glycogen from the liver. And so they've got livers going down to their knees. They're huge because they're just full of glycogen. But otherwise, they're fine. Okay. So they'll faint because they're hypoglycemic, but their livers are fine. So you give them medication to release that, and then everything, they're good. But it's when we introduce fructose into that mix that your liver starts to take a hit. And then, of course, like the more additives and preservatives and chemicals and everything you run into, you start to take that hit as well. And that's why the juice powders, like at the clinic, we really push the juice powders hard, not because like they're fancy or fun or anything. It's just that they're incredibly effective. And because you're going to get a lot of toxin binders from there. And so for liver maintenance, you're going to want to do things that keep bile flowing, because there's toxins that get released in the bile. So it's like a normal liver should make upwards of 1 quart, 32 ounces or more of bile per day. Okay. People don't realize that. And a stuck liver. And so like when I say, when I do a scan or something on somebody and I'm be like, oh, I'm seeing a lot of liver inflammation and everything, and then based on what you're telling me, you basically have a stuck liver. And I always get this head scratching. It's like, what's a stuck liver? Well, you got something like 50,000 feet of biliary tube in your liver, and each one of those tubes handles a chemical process. And if one of those tubes is stuck, like it's literally impacted with a stone, or the precursor of a stone. And it doesn't have to be a calcified stone. It can just be essentially a cholesterol stone or sludgy bile or something like that, where it's just not moving anymore. You are going, whatever toxin is going to enter, or toxin or things that needs to be metabolized, that's going to enter that tube to actually get metabolized, it's not going to be able to go in there, and it's going to back up into the system, and then that's going to give you toxic shock of some kind. And usually that, not limited to without making too many people angry, the most classic symptom of this is hot flashes for menopausal women. Most of the MDs out there are chasing their tails trying to balance out estrogen to progesterone and get all of these things and everything. And it's not that you're at first, and that very well might be, okay, because all the toxicity and everything that's in our society, or in deficiencies that going around, like you might need that. You might be low in one and too high in another, and that might be a chronic state. But the issue that no one talks about up first is that if one is high, is it high because you're not producing enough? Or is it high because it's not being metabolized properly as an end-stage product in the liver? So what we should do before we put somebody on very harsh and very life-altering hormone replacement therapy, which is a lot of what menopausal women go on, we should really work to make sure that their liver is clear and flowing as healthy as possible, because if that clears the issue, and in my experience in our clinic, it clears the issue very often, there you go. You don't have to have hormone replacement therapy. Now, if you're still showing that you need that, then that's something that we can work with, and we refer out to that. But that's where you should go first. So if you're an athlete, like a lot of everybody here is, you can draw conclusions that you are doing a lot of metabolic good. Like you're increasing cardiovascular, you're doing a lot of good, but if you don't follow up that good with making sure that your body can take the trash out, then where are we at? It's like, so you're going to end up doing damage because all this metabolic waste is going to try and enter the liver. It can't get out. It's going to make you toxic, and that's why a lot of runners and distance athletes end up becoming sick very easily, is because they simply cannot deal with the metabolic waste that's coming out. So yeah, that's so take care of the liver. The liver is going to take care of you, and you're actually going to, and the liver goes down. It does a lot of things. Like it improves mood and your endurance will go up. Your ability to filter all sorts of toxins out of your blood will go, like everything will improve. You take care of the liver, you take care of you. And then for the endurance athlete, what they don't realize is that you are only going to run on sugar like a very small fraction of your actual distance running or distance biking or whatever. And you are going to need to rely on the liver in order to take triglycerides in from the blood and turn them into usable fuel that cells can work with. Either you're going to do that through ketones or like the gluconeogenesis or something like that, where you're going to take either proteins or fats and turn them into sugars, glucose for the blood.
On that topic, I'm reading a book by Dina Castor, and she talks. You know who Coach V Hill is, and
of course I do.
One of the of course. One of the things that he talked about is what you're talking about, is that you're training the body to use fat as a fuel for these 20-mile long runs, marathons. And then he compared it to birds on migration and all these other basically distance athletes of the animal world. So is that basically what you're talking about, is the ketones? Yeah.
Yeah, you have to be physiologically adapted to it. So and that's where getting off of all the sugary drinks will actually help you do that, because your body will be able to move over and start producing ketones, or if that's your thing, or it'll go into fat burning mode a lot easier if it's not stuck with a ton of insulin floating around the body. If you don't have a good insulin glucagon response, so basically insulin drives storage. So if you're like on this roller coaster of sugar, like where every time you're eating like 5, 6, 7 times a day, every 2 seconds you're just like, I gotta stoke the fire or whatever. I mean, there is something to be said about that. So if you're a bodybuilder and you're trying to keep your size and keep everything as big as possible, then there's efficacy in that. If you're a distance athlete and you're trying to be able to switch from basically using sugar that you take in, like external fuel sources, and being able to use with great efficiency internal fuel sources, your ability to switch off insulin and be very insulin sensitive so that you can switch that off and turn glucagon on. So glucagon is the release of fat. So if you are insulin resistant, or you're chronically on this insulin yo-yo all day long, your ability to release the fat when you need it, which is during a long run, just simply isn't going to be there.
So let's move on to our next topic. So we're talking about powdered nutrition, powdered juices, and things like that. And I've experienced your green drink before. I think it's been new and improved since then. But it was, at first, it was definitely a nose plugger to get it down. So talk about green drink powder and what that nutrition is.
So basically, at the clinic we deal a lot with people that don't have good digestion. Like they come to me because gas, bloating, leaky gut. They always it's like, I think I got leaky gut, and I'm like, well, everybody has leaky gut, so that's a safe assumption. So what we found is that the reason we advocate juice powders is that most Americans, through no fault of their own, but their digestion is so incredibly compromised that they need a lot of nutrition, usually until they start making better food choices, that it needs to be in supplement form. And then they need it to be as easily digestible as possible. And the way that you digest well is with surface area. So if you have a pill tablet that's highly compressed and you've got very poor digestion, you're not going to be able to break that apart. And in fact, like you can do a search on the internet and that's why they say a lot of supplementation does not work, because they find it in the porta potties after all the races. Yeah. And if it's coming in and going out and looking exactly the same, pill going in and pill coming out, what's it doing for you? Nothing. So we use the powders because they increase surface area. A lot of times we'll give enzymes to go with it so that it's easy to be broken down, because most people are enzyme deficient. And we are actually reformulating the juice, like the green drink is just what we call it. So one, it's make it easier to digest, because we're finding that a lot of people just can't handle the amount of protein that's in it. And a lot of people don't realize our green drink is somewhere around 40 to 50% protein, and they're just like, well, how can that be? There's no whey powder, there's no nothing in it. And it's like, well, it's because there's a lot of protein in plants. And then the chlorella and spirulina, being algae, they're like protoplants, so they're kind of half animal, half plant. Well, those are about 60% complete proteins. They actually have a protein profile very similar to eggs. And so you put that all together and you take as much as people do. And it's like, I always, it's like, I tell people till I'm blue in the face, it's like, hey, cause it's like, oh, I just mixed this with my protein shake. And I'm like, this is a protein shake. Yeah. Please stop doing that. That's why you're having a hard time digesting it, is because you're eating 100 grams of protein all at once. But there's this disconnect. It's like vegetables, like meat is protein, vegetables are not protein. That's not accurate. And so that's why we do the powders the way that they are. Now, the other part the reason we do that is not only from the nutrition, is because it's detoxifying and nutrition all at the same time, because you have to increase the outgo at the same time increasing the income. And so if you're just taking in nutrition, but you're not helping to move things along, then you're going to end up getting very mild results from it. People is like, well, I'm taking all this stuff, I can't figure out why I'm not improving. And that's because the flow of the body is so incredibly important. So the green drinks just do it all at once. And then because we mix powders individually for a lot of our clients, it's like if they need, let's say a client has gout, for instance. Well, we'll mix up, we'll put a lot of tart cherry powder in there so that they can work. It's just customized for them. So that's why we do it. So it's nutrition, it's detox, and then it's pH modifying. Let me touch on pH. Has anybody that's been on here touched on like high pH water or anything like that?
No, you're the first nutrition person I've talked to. I say we, the royal we.
The royal we, man.
Yes.
Got it. So this is falling out of favor. Thank God it's falling out of favor, but it is still, some people just, they really grasp on to this because the marketing campaign was done extremely well. But so originally when they were talking about alkaline water or high pH water, the original notes were saying so neutral water in the middle is 7.0, and they were saying, well, you need to have alkaline water. Well, what they meant was 7.3, 7.4, and that's the best optimal ratio for all of that. And so you get these marketing companies that are saying, oh, well, you need to alkalinize your system because you're too acidic. And so and that's true. People tend to be, especially if you have a high sugar diet and low liver function. But the problem is that you can't do that by basically drinking an antacid. So if you have a high pH or alkaline or base, if we want to go back to high school chemistry, that's 8, 9, and 10. I saw a high pH water that was 10.0. At one point, and it's I'm going to point out that bleach is 11.
Oh boy.
Right. So you're getting, I've tried some of these things because I was it was recommended to me by some other naturopath, and I was like, all right, I've never tried it. It doesn't make any sense to me chemically, but I should try it just so that I'm not one of these people that badmouths it without going through it. I had the absolute worst week of digestion that I've ever had ever, because you think about it. You're taking in, your stomach is stronger than battery acid.
Right.
It can dissolve a cheeseburger on its own with no mechanical assistance under proper circumstances in 4 hours. All right. So then you're taking basically so we got acid here, and then we're taking in a base. And so all we're succeeding in doing is neutralizing to zero step one, well, technically step two, digestion.
Yeah.
And then whatever you eat, assuming you can replenish that hydrochloric acid within a proper time frame, but whatever you eat within 4 to 6 hours after taking that alkaline water is not going to get digested, and it's going to putrefy in your guts. Bacteria, candida, yeast, molds, funguses, they're going to go to town on that. You got any parasites, you're just delivering food to them. So, like, no, it doesn't work like that. Now, the way that you alkalize the body properly is through trace minerals and mineral absorption, not through taking in weird pH substances. And that's what so like trace minerals from like fulvic acid, various sea kelps, sea vegetables, cucumber water, celery water, something like they've got a lot of salts in them, which are a lot of trace minerals, and that's why they're very good for that. But they themselves are not overly acidic or overly alkaline. And in fact, what's interesting is that the end stage product of acid versus alkalinity, people think that lemon juice is acidic, and it is acidic externally, but as soon as it gets in you, it actually alkalizes you. So you have lemon juice, which is very acidic, but as soon as it goes through this whole process and it starts being worked on by the digestive tract, the end product is an alkalization process. So it's like don't get stuck in false equivalencies. Like, do your research, like look this up, and then of course, like if you're drinking it and then all of like, my stomach hurts, then like stop doing it.
Right.
You know, use common sense. A lot of this stuff is actually, it's basic science with common sense, but because we're not taught to put these things together, and most people just rely on clever marketing for all of their like nutritional information, they get stuck in some bad information. So no high pH water, no alkaline water,
so
and no mineral water either.
It's a good idea, but it's been done in such a way that it's bad for you.
No, it's a terrible idea, and it's been done in such a way that it's super bad for you.
Well, the idea though that you do want to get your body a little less acidic is the good idea though, right?
Oh yeah, well okay, so that's
that
idea sure.
is good, just not the alkaline water.
Well, define your ideas.
Right. Okay, we talked about salt in recovery. So let's talk about two at one. Heat tolerance and cramping kind of go hand in hand. Right,
exactly. Well, basically, if your ability to sweat, right, is your ability to regulate body temperature over a certain point. And there are some people that just say, well, I just don't sweat a whole lot. Well, odds are that person, because I was one of them, actually is incredibly low in salt, because so I'll use myself as an example. I had mono when I was in 6th grade, and not the fun way to get it either. I just picked it up, right? Which, looking back on it, that was a waste, but whatever. So, but the result is after all of those high fevers and everything that was associated with it, my taste buds became extremely sensitive to salt, to the point where it actually burned my tongue. So I just naturally just avoided salt in a lot of things. And I became incredibly heat intolerant. And you remember this when we were working out. Like, I was always having a hard time in the heat, but as soon as the winter rolled around, I'd be outside with like no gloves on, you know, 0 degrees, no gloves on, no hat, because I was hot. Okay. Like, it was very hard for me to regulate my body temperature. So now fast forward to like actually getting some decent information, and actually supplementing with my heat tolerance has increased. My ability to sweat has increased. I sweat like a pig now. Okay, which is great. It's what you need to do.
Yeah. Just doesn't sound appetizing.
No, it doesn't. But that's function. So the reason I can sweat so much more is that my body is not trying to conserve, because you can't conserve salt through sweat. You can conserve salt through urination. Like your kidneys will kick up a hormone called aldosterone that is actually it's you can think of it like reverse osmosis, where but it's reverse osmosis. You are using the nephrons that are in a certain state that's triggered with aldosterone to actually filter salt out of excess liquid, and then that liquid gets expelled through the urine. And that is an emergency. If you're doing that, if aldosterone is elevated, which it is in a lot of people because I see it all the time on my scans, then you are in a chronic stress state or a chronic emergency state, because your body is so desperate to conserve salt. Because if you don't have it, then you can't contract muscles and you'll die of a heart attack, which is no fun. Don't die of a heart attack. It's not fun.
I'll try not to.
Right. But if you just take in salt, then all of a sudden you are in the beginning going to bloat for about, if you're super low, you're going to bloat for 3 days to 7 days, 3 days to a week. But in time, if you are consistently hydrating yourself and consistently taking in a higher amount of salt, and we're talking like there is no upper limit to salt. When things become too salty, that's the limit. So when you're just like, bleh, I'm done with salt, you're done, because it's a negative feedback loop. Until then, you're good to go. And that's also assuming you don't have some weirdo genetic disease or something like that where you just can't do it. So don't let anybody in the comments of this video say, no, I said it. There you go. So, but if that is the case, eventually your kidneys will say, whoa, we've got plenty of salt and we got plenty of water. It's easy for me just to dump salt and water at the same time, and I don't need to make this salt-sparing hormone anymore. And so that technically will lower stress throughout the body, because aldosterone is a trigger for the adrenal glands, which will then trigger cortisol. Okay? So that'll elevate your cortisol, and it'll stress you out. And so just by increasing salt, that's why you're going to help the adrenal glands, and you're going to help the kidneys, and you're going to lower stress throughout the body, because you don't have to work so hard to get rid of it. Now, if we're talking about heat tolerance and heat recovery for athletes, you need salt, because you can't filter it. At least I haven't seen any filtering mechanism for salt through sweat. Sweat is inherently very salty, because it just is. So if you have an excess amount of liquid in your body, and you have, or not excess, if you have enough, and then if you have enough salt that you can spare it so that you can sweat, you're going to sweat to regulate your body temperature, and there you go. And if you don't, you're just not going to sweat enough, and you're going to get heat stroke.
And then does that also translate into cramping with the body?
Yeah. Cramping. So cramping is one of three things. It's like most people say, "Oh, I'm cramped. I need to eat a banana because I'm low in potassium."
Right.
It's like, yeah, kind of, maybe. It's either going to be potassium, magnesium, or salt. So that's why I say like a good recovery drink is like wheatgrass or barley grass, because it's going to have a lot of all that stuff already in it. So you cover all your bases, plus your trace minerals. But you're basically cramping because there's some sort of electrical. It's either an electrical discharge, or there's something that, like you're bridging a connection between two nerves, and it's causing a cramp. And so communication isn't flowing properly, and that's going to be an electrical communication. So in my opinion, it would be better just to hit all three bases. So make sure that you're supplementing with some sort of magnesium, which you need to be supplementing magnesium. The U.S. standard American diet gets below not even optimal, but it gets below RDA levels, which are basically so that you don't die. So most people are chronically low in magnesium, and the reason is magnesium is the stress mineral. And so most people are stressed out of their gourds all the time, so they're burning through it like crazy. So
Yeah.
potassium, magnesium, and salt, cramps will go away. If that doesn't take it away, you're dehydrated, drink more water.
So those would be the 4 then: water, salt, potassium.
Yeah, I guess
magnesium.
4.
Okay.
I mean, from the mineral standpoint, it would
Right.
be 3. And then we're going to add 4. I usually just keep flowing on the list until I run out of things. So that's why I don't like to count them up front.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the gist. Like, if you've got enough that you can spare it, you're going to be stress free.
A lot of people are trying to lose weight, and that's why they started running. Because I've noticed. I mean, you and I were runners in high school and college, and we've probably met a lot of friends that were softball or basketball or baseball players that found running afterward, because you can't really find 8 other people and go play a baseball game, but you can
This is true.
put on a pair of shoes and go for a run by yourself. And a lot of them are doing it to lose weight. And one of the biggest fads of the last 20 years has been the low-carb diet. So if you're trying to lose weight, but you're also trying to fuel, what's the right balance between high and low-carb diets?
There is no balance, in my opinion. This is strictly my opinion, and I'm in the middle of researching a lot of this. But I have a lot of different resources that support this, and it basically goes down to your enzyme profile. So if you come from like my wife, she's from China, but she's from northern China, and they do not eat a lot of rice there. And she has friends that are from southern China, and they eat rice every day. Both are skinny.
Yeah.
So you got high carb, and actually very low carb, very high vegetable from where my wife is, and both are effective. You got people from Pakistan and India that like eat rice like it's going out of style every single day. They live on it. Skinny. Okay. You get people from Northern Europe that eat butters and fats and cheeses and meats and other things. Skinny. Then you get to America and everybody's a bloated hot mess. Well, what do we have more than anything else is processed sugary food. If you want to lose the weight, you're going to just cut the fructose. And the reason I say look specifically for fructose is because in every processed sugar that there is, high fructose corn syrup, agave, or whatever, learn the names of all 60 names of sugar, cut those out of your diet, and you have now, you don't have to be a genius to have proper nutrition. You just have to have, you just know all the names for sugar and know all the names for MSG, and you're good to go. If a product has one or both of those in it, don't eat it. Done. And you'll lose weight, and you'll lose weight chemically. So everything that you're doing. So now that's how you lose weight. And that's the big secret. Is it fun? No, because sugar is as addictive as cocaine.
Yeah.
You can just look that up. They have the MRI scans to prove it. I usually advise people step down gradually so that you don't get divorced. So, high carb versus low carb. Okay. Well, it really depends on what you do well on. You can do well on high carb if you can digest it, if you've got good amylase response, if you're well hydrated and you can produce a lot of saliva. If you can talk for 5 minutes straight and not swallow once and not have all this foam on your mouth, you're dehydrated. Okay, you need to drink more. Low carb, well, if you don't have a lot of amylase and you find yourself like saying like I'm just not losing weight, or I don't have the energy, or maybe you get really gassy with high carbohydrates, anything, then switch to low carb. See how you feel. If you feel good on it and you're not getting gas or bloating, or like it's like you're losing you've got good energy, no lethargy, then that is a diet that works for you. And because every person, every body has different body chemistry, it's very hard to say high or low carb will work better or worse for anybody. You almost just have to try it. I would say that if you know your ancestry, that has a pretty good predictor of it, because traditional foods were traditional for a reason, because they worked in an area. And so let's say like Like for me, Croatia being Southern Europe, I did have access to like basically um, medium carbohydrates, medium proteins, medium fat. So it's like third, third, and third. You know, it's like, and I feel pretty good on that, and I maintain weight, and I can lose weight on that. Just modulate my sugar, like up or down to however much fat I want to lose. Um, you know, I have people in the clinic that swear by keto, and then I do a quick ancestry, and they're usually Northern Europe or Russian or something like that. In which case, they're much more adapted to eating high protein or high fat, which is what keto really is. It's high. Most people think keto is high protein, but it's really high fat. And I tried keto, and I felt like garbage on it. And that's just because I just don't process the fat as well as other people do. Does that mean that all of the science for keto is now trash? No, it's good science. If you can do it, try it.
Right.
If you feel good on it, keep going on it. And so it's like, as I talk to my clients about diet, I don't write diet plans. I make suggestions. Like, it's better to know what is good nutrition and what is bad nutrition, and then formulate an idea of what you want to eat around there. Because if you're relying on me to make a diet plan for you, I'm not going to be there all the time. And what I think is good food, other people might not like. This is something that you need to be active in doing, and you need to take responsibility for it. And if you put yourself into that, you're going to find something that is both healthy, that you like, and makes you feel good.
Well, in addition to, choosing a diet that's, like you said, it feels good, it tastes good, and it's all good for you, it's also high functioning digestion, right?
Right. Yeah. So, okay. So let's circle this back around to, like, we'll get to digestion in a second. That's actually pretty quick. But the original question was fuel. How do you fuel a long run or a long workout? It just depends on how you train at that point. So if a lot of people, let's go with heart rate variability, which is how I trained for the marathon. And a lot of people found it maddening, and they didn't allow themselves to really adhere to it like you should. But when the math says that you need to be running at, like, for me, it was, my complete fat burning zone was 130, like 128 to 135 beats per minute, something like that. I can't remember exactly. What I do remember was that was almost in the beginning a 9-minute mile pace. That was disheartening.
Yeah, it's slow. Yeah,
it's super slow, and it's almost walking at some point. But what I did is I said, okay, well, the science is there, the math is there. If this is what I need to do, I'm going to do it. And by the time I ran my marathon, my PR in the marathon, which was, I think, was like 2:48, at 1:35, I was running almost a 6-minute flat mile.
Wow.
Which is not fast by any means. I could go forever. Right? I was not a fast runner, so don't let anybody misconstrue that when you're talking about high performance athletes. But the point is that it was the same output of energy. So efficiency went higher. All right. So if you're going to do whatever you're going to do, high carb or low carb, make sure that you're adapted to, like, the type of working out or the type of thing that you want to do. So it's like, if you're going to go for extreme distances, like when I was running, I loved doing the marathon and the long runs and everything. Well, you're not going to be popping a goo every 2 seconds through there. That's just miserable. So you're going to have to rely on this stuff right here to get you through. All right. If that's the case, then you need to make sure that you are very well fat adapted. And that means that you might have to run a 10-12 minute mile for a couple months in order to jumpstart that aerobic process and increase aerobic enzymes to the point where you can use it as fuel. If you're on a bike and you're choosing to say, I'm going to burn sugar through the liver the entire time, well, number one, you got to have a clean liver to do that properly. Right. And then you need to pop, like, goos or God forbid, gummy bears or whatever, but you got to keep that sugar going in all the time in order for that to happen. I would choose something, you're going to do that, you really need to do, like, figure out like something that's almost completely glucose. They actually do sell glucose powder, and you can make like glucose syrup and everything, but I would choose the other one. That seems kind of gross and overly technical.
Well, what you're talking about with going based off of heart rate, whether it's a 9-minute mile or a 6-minute mile, that gives a lot of credence to something I always hated, which was hammerheads on the team that took a 6-minute pace on easy days. So Monday was a long run, so you do 12 to 20 miles at a good hard pace. And then Tuesday's supposed to be easy, but then they're still going a hard pace on Tuesday, which is easy, hard pace on Wednesday, hard pace on Thursday, and racing on Saturday. So it was maddening to me that they never eased into a recovery zone of training, but is also training your heart to work at an optimum level for fat burning and teaching your body how to use its own resources.
Absolutely. And because so when we're talking about running and endurance, we're really talking about, we're not even talking about the muscle, where we're hitting the muscle hard and training the muscle, which you do in a lot of other sports like weightlifting or powerlifting or bodybuilding or something like that. What you're really doing is optimizing the enzymatic pathways to produce power and convert stored fuel to active fuel. And the way that you do that is you have to just work those enzyme pathways. And so, like, you can, hard workout days, what was really interesting is that, like, when I was training for the marathon and I had my best marathon under this training, is that my hard workout days were, for a long time, were exactly the same heart rate. I just did it for longer. Mm-hmm. And then, like, I would run for 2 or 3 hours at that heart rate, maintaining that heart rate, because that was the hard workout. And then the next day would be at that heart rate, but I would only have like a half hour or 45-minute run, and then I'd be done. And then it's the load process from there. So when you have these guys that are running the same pace all the time, they're really doing themselves a disservice. And if you're a young person or like whatever, and you're on a team and somebody's doing that, and you know that they're going too hard for you, you have to be secure enough in your knowledge of how this whole process works to say, that's too fast. This is recovery. If I have to run by myself or bike by myself, that's what I'm going to do.
So circling back to what we were talking about earlier, which is high-functioning digestion as opposed to a perfect diet, take us down that.
Well, so one of the side notes, one of my favorite authors, he wrote the Vitamin C Cure, which I highly recommend everybody read as well. And he's given a presentation, and he was like, just as an aside, it would be better for you to have perfect digestion and eat McDonald's every day than to have a completely clean organic diet and have terrible digestion. And I was like, okay, I've never heard anybody actually say that before. This was a couple years ago. But it makes sense if you think about it, because if you've got great organic food and your enzyme process and your digestion process is so mucked up because whatever, I mean, toxins, pesticides, leaky gut, anything like that, all you're doing is it's going to go into your stomach. Your stomach is going to do the best that it can, but because it has no hydrochloric acid, you're just going to get mechanical digestion out of it. So you're going to get a hiatal hernia. Or I just call it, it's not always a hernia, but it's a high stomach. Okay. And that's what happens when your stomach spasms into your diaphragm, and it's not a good place to be. But
what's
from
the symptom
there,
of that, or like what is that? What other problem does that cause?
I find so I always know, and I hold a lot of stress in my stomach and my digestion. That's probably one of the reasons why, I've struggled with it a lot during my life, is because, stress really destroys things. So if you hold it in your stomach, then it's going to destroy your digestion. So, but basically what happens is I always know that something's up when I really feel like I have to burp, but I can't burp. And that's because the stomach is contorted and that valve can't open anymore. And so then my chiropractor has to do this thing where he basically shoves his hand into in my chest and drags my stomach down.
Jeez.
It's great. Yeah.
Sounds like a Mortal Kombat move.
Yeah, well, could work.
Yeah.
But then, okay, so you have your stomach digestion is bad. So then it goes into your, the duodenum and that first curve outside. And then your pancreas is like, oh my God, this is not digested at all. I've got to dump all of these enzymes into that. And you overload the pancreas because there's not enough enzymes in the world that's going to do anything to that. But you got to eat something out of it. You got to get some nutrition out of it. And so then you go through there, but as it goes through the digestive tract more and more, which is still undigested, it's being acted upon by all of these yeasts and other bacteria, and it's putrefying, and then it's allowing too much bacterial action on that food, and they are then producing all sorts of toxins that are going to contribute to ulcers, leaky gut, like depression, anxiety, because you're going to be picking up all these toxins, and then you're going to be low in all this nutrition because you're not absorbing any of it. You're feeding all the bacteria in your gut, and probably parasites. Let's be honest. Like, America's not as clean as people think it is. And then most people have terrible constipation in this whole setup, so it's going to sit in their colon for like a week, and then they'll wake up one day and they're like, head scratcher. It's like, how did I get colon cancer? There you go. So, but if you've got perfect digestion, which, let's be honest, you're not going to have perfect digestion for very long, but if you eat McDonald's, then it gets all broken down appropriately, and then it gets all absorbed appropriately, and then you get it out quickly, and you have minimal gastric fermentation on that. That is better, technically, than the previous thing I just described.
So that's kind of a common question with runners, too, is how to make yourself poop. So you're talking about having better digestion, and does that all go back then to green drink and getting fructose out of your diet and getting a good balance of pH in your body?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. You have to do that. But it's the functioning of the liver is really the key to it, because if you have that quart to quart and a half of bile production, you're going to be extremely regular, because the bile also acts as an intestinal lubricant as well, and most people have no idea about that. They just think it's for fat absorption. Yeah. But no, you need bile to emulsify the fats, and then it allows absorption of various vitamins and minerals. So if you do not have enough bile production, and you feel that you are malnourished or you're deficient in something, the first thing that you need to do when you take some of these things is get a good bile supplement to go with it until you start producing your own. And fortunately, ox bile is 99.9% very similar to human bile, so it's a good supplement. Now, that being said too, if anybody has their gallbladder removed, it's a must. You just have to supplement with some sort of external bile with each meal, because you can't store enough bile, because that storage device is now removed for each meal, and that's just something that you have to do. And we solve a lot of digestive problems for a lot of our clients that have gallbladders removed just by two ox bile tabs with every meal, and they feel a lot better from that. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, I think so. Because
okay,
I've heard you say this before, is that Americans, especially, but people in general, are just looking for a pill to take to help with A, B, or C problem. But what it really comes down to is, it sounds like the liver is super important, more important than most people think. People are afraid of getting too much salt in their diet, but that's pretty much near impossible unless something's wrong with the filtration system in your body. Talking about pH, talking about how to supplement with fruit powders instead of, or is it fruit powders that you were talking about earlier?
Well, just juice powders.
Juice powders. And
so juice powders over the whole plant powders, because the whole plant is just going to give you excess cellulose that you can't digest. And so that's why juice powders, fruit or vegetable, are several times more expensive than just regular powders.
Yeah. It's so funny
more
because
concentrated.
I've been a cheapskate my whole life, but it was funny.
Yeah, you have.
Yeah, I've found this. It has nothing to do with what we're talking about, but there was a guy on a YouTube video, and he had to taste test because he's supposed to be this expert, cheap beer versus expensive beer. So he had like a lager, he had all these different types of beers, and he was spot on with tasting the expensive one versus the inexpensive one and knowing which is which. But it's kind of the same idea with nutrition, is that there's a reason it's more expensive, because the ingredients are better, it works, and it's put into proportions that are good for you or better for you.
Yeah, that's exactly right. The only thing that is oddly not expensive, and in my opinion, it seems like it should be, is that I'm also working on some therapies for testosterone support or hormonal support for men and women. But one of the best things that you can do is in homeopathy in general is that like cures like, or like supports like. So if you are low in some sort of organ, so let's say like you need liver help, that eating a high quality liver or taking a high quality liver supplement will help with that immensely. Now, the thing that is just baffling to me, although I kind of know why, is that most men need testosterone support. Well, if you're going to do that, then you can get this stuff called orchic substance, which is a clinical euphemistic term for cow testicles. And that stuff is super, super cheap. And it's high quality, but it's just cheap. And my only conclusion is that most people are not beaten down the door to take cow testicles as a supplement.
Right.
I do. I feel great. Been on it for a little while now, and it's like, hey, this is good. We're gonna carry this in the clinic because it works. I'm only concerned about what works and what doesn't work, not necessarily what's flashy or kosher or whatever.
Easily marketable.
Yeah, easily marketable. Yeah, I guess.
So let's hit that as our last topic, is your clinic. So My Complete Health is on Frank Road in North Canton, Ohio. On the website is mycompletehealthnd.com. So what are some of the things that you can find in the clinic and then also on the website?
Well, the website gives a good breakdown of what we actually do in the clinic, and it's kind of a soft exposure to all the everything. So like in the clinic, we have like dry salt therapy, and that's really good for lungs or sinus, whatever. And
that's a room covered with salt.
That's right. No, it's not covered in salt. What we actually do is we use a medical grade salt atomizer, and it's uses pharmaceutical grade salt, which, yes, that is a thing.
Yeah.
And it pulverizes it to micron, like the nanoscale or micron scale, and you breathe it in, and it can kill a lot of bacteria and viruses and everything that are actually in the lungs itself. And it's very good for asthma, COPD, or like chronic sinus infections and stuff like that, allergies. In Europe, it's actually like a prescription. It's used to treat. In America, it's a recreation.
Yeah. But
you can draw your own conclusion from that. Then we have red light therapy, which just like plants, humans respond to light wavelengths, but our mitochondria, the powerhouse of the cells, respond to about 650 nanometers and also 810-ish nanometers in the wavelength spectrum. And so we've got panels set up so that you can just blast yourself with this red light and really recharge yourself. And that's, I like to tell people, is like, that's the only thing that I have in the office that is quite literally putting energy into your system to help you recover. And it's good for skin. It's very good for skin, actually. Like, that's what it's mostly marketed for, is wrinkle reduction, and women are all over it.
Yeah.
So, so we've got that. We also have partnered with, because I designed that for the clinic. It has more expensive LEDs in it than most of the stuff you'll find on the internet. From there, we've got some massage chairs, and then roller traction spinal. We've got electromedicine devices, so like Rife devices with scalar that are really good for balancing energies and a whole bunch of stuff that's beyond the scope of this video. Mm-hmm. And then what I do is it's the functional medicine coaching coupled with the holistic doctor, although certified holistic health professional. And that is helping people to bridge the gap between, like, do you need like a medical, like an MD, like, do you need surgery? Do you need a prescription? Do you need something? Or do you need holistic, which is natural deficiency? Most every disease is because of some deficiency or another. So what I do is that I've got a scanning device, and basically I can look at you electrically, and from there I can see deficiencies, pathogens, and I can also make remedies with it as well. And so anybody that's familiar with homeopathy knows that the more customized that remedy is for a person, the more effective it is. So I can make them customized for each person. And so that allows me to say, from a coaching perspective, because in Ohio, at least, there is no certifying board or anything for a holistic doctor. Mm-hmm. So I can't say you need this because of this, but what I can say is, based on what I see on the scan and based on what you're presenting with, it would be in your best interest to consider X, Y, and Z, or people in similar situations have benefited from whatever. So you got a bunch of verbal gymnastics in there, but essentially it's like, yeah, that's what we do. So we fill in, we correct the imbalances in the body, whether energetic or physical deficiencies. We put energy back into the system. We detox the body. We reduce the stress. And we basically, it's like the body does the healing. That's what I tell everybody. Right. All I'm trying to do is get it into a state that whatever is blocking it from healing, or if it doesn't have enough of something to heal, that I give it what it needs and I remove what it's trying to get rid of. That's what I do.
Okay. And then in addition to the website, you also do host seminar type nights.
Yeah, so like every Thursday night at the clinic, although it hasn't been the last several Thursdays.
Right. Our YouTube seminar.
Yeah, and so I'm not entirely sure, based on people's willingness to get into large crowds.
Right.
Now, even though I say, like, I subscribe to a terrain model of things where it's like, if you take care of yourself and you have your immunity boosted, like, you could go into a crowd of like everybody that has Ebola and you'll be fine. But I understand where most people are coming from, and so we're probably going to be doing a lot more video postings or a lot more stuff like this, where we might do virtual conferences and everything. But we try and do something educational a couple times a month, whether in person or video, because it's really education that is the empowering thing for people, like lay people, so non-expert people. And if they just understand why they're doing something, they can make better decisions the next time. So if somebody just says, stop eating sugar, and you don't know why, when
Right.
sugar presents itself in front of you again, you're just going to say, oh, how bad could it be?
Right.
Well, if you know how bad it is, then you're going to say, well, that's super bad. I'm not going to do that. So that's what I try and do. It's like I try and educate people as much as possible so that they stick with the program and they understand what I'm trying to accomplish with them, and they can have success.
All right. Well, Ian, thanks for taking the time to talk with us. For everyone that's listening, he's from My Complete Health in North Canton, Ohio, and also on mycompletehealthnd.com. Ian Miller, I'll be talking to you again soon.
All right. Thanks for having me, Nathan.
Bye.
You too. Bye.